The primary purpose of the workshop was to develop, priorities, I guess, for the overall organic industry in Saskatchewan. And it was clear that changes had to be made at pretty well all levels. The workshop was co-sponsored by us, the SOD organization, and Organics Connections. We developed and identified 7 priorities and established working groups around those 7 priorities to continue on. The groups drafted a business plan based on key priorities and identified at the workshop and proposed new bylaws for the consideration of the SOD board. The key recommendations that were found were what needed to be happening for now and in the future was to declare that SOD represents all certified organic farmers, processors, businesses, rather than requiring the purchase of a membership to become a member. Changing the name of the organization. SOD has been a great acronym. It's roots, it's grassroots, it's what we do, we farm, we work with the soil. It's been there, and it's given us, I think, that firm foundation to step to the next level. Updating the organization's vision and mission statement as well. Now, these recommendations were reviewed by the SOD board and accepted. SOD will be holding a special general meeting on January the 13th, 2015, and more details are to follow. We're trying to organize it around Crop Production Week in Saskatoon. I believe Marla has made arrangements to have a meeting place at the Organic Farmers Market in Saskatoon, or the Farmers Market, I should say, in Saskatoon. So more details will be coming out. It'll be on our website. There'll be some letters and there'll be some phone calls made. So we hope to see all of you there. Now, the purpose, of course, of the special general meeting is to ratify all these changes and these proposals that are there for us to make for the future of SOD and for the organic industry. Very exciting times. The bylaws supporting the changes will be presented at the meeting, and a motion on all the changes will be made to vote on. So, again, hope to see you there. Implementing a new funding model. Now, that was one of the things, of course, we've struggled with over the years, and that's our funding model, and it's just not sustainable anymore. We need to look ahead. We need to look past the way we've been doing business. I believe this is such an important issue, and I know I can't relay it to you properly. I wasn't on the working group personally, so I've asked Terry Tyson from Grain Millers, who was on the working group, in fact I think he chaired the group, to come out and say a few words to give you a better description and allow you to soak in the information and be prepared for our meeting in January. Okay, Terry, thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Sorry about the glare, everybody. And I apologize, some of you are probably about to hear this for the 3rd time. We had a couple of meetings yesterday where I gave the same update. The rest of you get ready for a couple of acronyms. So yeah, as Gary mentioned, I was present at the Calling Lake Center priority setting workshop, and one of the weak moments when my hand went up because I felt it was so important was to participate in the working group that looked at sustaining reliable and repeatable funding for the sector. And I co-chaired that with Chantel Jacobs, just for clarity on that. And if anybody knows Chantel, that meant I rode her coattails until she went on mat leave, and then had to pick up my socks and do some of the work. So anyways, we looked at a number of different models, and the model we've ended up with and are trying to bring forth now, admittedly, I was a skeptic on it, and I in weeding through other potential ways to get funding and secure funding, it became apparent that really an industry-funded model at least for today and the few years to come, is probably the only way we're going to get there in the short term. And so what we proposed was a fund called the Prairie Organic Development Fund, the PODF for short, that would be funded by industry players in the value chain, and we decided early not simply to focus at the first point of sale like grain millers or Sunrise Foods or those types of companies, but to be sure to try to reach downstream. And I know in some of the research and development work that we've been funding for a few years, there seems to be an appetite at that further downstream level from companies like Nature's Path and Cliff Bar and Dave's Killer Bread and so on to write checks to support the grassroots and the sustainability of their supply base. And so it's important to them, it's important to us, right? If the supply shrinks and if there's no coherent voice and strong sort of voice for the sector, everybody's business suffers. So what we did was we basically hit the ground, sort of beating the bushes for commitments, or at least hypothetical commitments. If we get there, would you support this? We looked for 3-year commitments, and in combination, we sort of set a goal of about $200,000 annually would be what would be needed to kind of make it viable as a minimum. We got to the point where a little over half of that is committed, and the other half or so of that we need is right there. We think there are a number of companies that have basically indicated that if the Prairie Organic Grains Initiative, which I'll talk a little bit more about so I don't leave you in the dark on that, if that gets approved and funded, that they would be then supporters of PODF. So let me back up a little bit. PODF, I'll talk a little bit about the structure of that and how it would work. So it would be, or will be, let's say, again, industry-funded model that it takes a pan-prairie approach. It will be housed in Saskatchewan, in fact, housed with sod, but it will be a separate entity. It will be governed by a board of directors that would consist of 10 people. 3 would be funder representatives, so industry people. 3 would be members representing the provincial organizations, your SOD, Organic Alberta, Manitoba Organic Alliance. 3 would be farmers, that, preferably one from each province, and 1 would be someone from the research community. And we would also have 3 non-voting or ex officio members as representatives of each provincial government. The monies that PODF would take in would be distributed. There would be streams of base funding distributed to each of those provincial bodies, just some core funding, no strings, free the SODs, the Organic Albertas up to be able to pay some of the operating cost bills and then approach membership and fundraising and tap that to do other things than just keep the lights on. And then a fairly large chunk of that money would then be, besides what goes to the provincial organizations, would be collected into what we're coining the Organic Innovation Fund. And the fund would then disperse these monies for research and development projects, communications projects, education projects. Sort of that's the business end where the priorities that were set for the sector in Fort Qu'Appelle and other priorities can then be addressed, and that's where the money flows. So you might imagine, as we sort of made these calls to companies and discussed this thing that might happen, there certainly was some hesitation from companies. Some companies right away said, yeah, we would support that. We know that we understand the need for that, and count us in. And others said, you know, talk to us when it's happening. Talk to us when it's there. Talk to us when you can explain more what the outcomes will be. And that's where the Prairie Organic Grains Initiative kind of came in. We're looking, by the way, that acronym for Prairie Organic Grains Initiative is POGI. So we're looking for a rebrand on that, and the floor is open. So, Organic Alberta folks, David Hobson and Becky Lipton, came up with the POGI project, and it's a very comprehensive project encompassing a lot of different priorities across the sector, aggressive budget, and what we all talked as a working group and as a steering committee or what have you was that yes, this is a project that POTF or the Organic Innovation Fund could fund and get started and show, you know, a tangible project, which in turn will help us go back to companies and say, look, this is what we're going to do. And so the POGI application, Becky and some of the working group folks got industry money rounded up for that, and enough to make an application to Western Economic Diversification for leveraged government funding. And POGI has gone through, I think, 3 steps or stages in the approval process of that, and all things are looking good. There is not yet official word, but when Point Blank asked the other day, I think Becky had a smile on her face. So we think we're going to get the I think it's $1.2 million in government funding for that program. And again, that would be a really soup to nuts. When you think about what this sector needs, POGI is looking at addressing some of it and getting that done. So I don't know if there are any questions. It's somewhat. I had a graphic yesterday that sort of showed the structure, but I don't have that today. But POTF, standalone entity housed within SOD, collects money from industry, disperses money to each of the provincial organizations, and Priority really collects money in the Organic Innovation Fund that would then be dispersed based on a strategic plan updated annually by that board of directors. And the first such disbursement would be towards the Prairie Organic Grains Initiative. Questions? Good.
Thanks, Terry. Yes, thank you very much, Terry and his group. Pretty exciting stuff. We're very, very excited about the future of organics and future of sod and how we can all play a role in taking us to the next level. Implementing that new funding model, I just wanted to reiterate, following up with what Terry has said, that the SOD board is committed to develop that Prairie Organic Development Fund initiative, and we're working alongside with the group and on various committees, and it's just terribly exciting. I appreciated the time Terry would spend with you on explaining that, because I thought it was such an important part of the revitalization. We just couldn't pass over it without a proper explanation. I know Debbie's looking at me because time is moving on here. A couple more things to say about what SOD has been doing and to act on these priority items that were mentioned at Calling Lakes. Adopting the Canadian organic regulations in Saskatchewan. A letter has been drafted and a position paper has been handed to the provincial government to try to urge the provincial government to take a long, hard look at adopting the core regulations. So that's that was also part of the revitalization process. And I don't know if Mr. Will Odie is in the audience, but we somehow overlooked him. It's almost like we take him for granted, but we do not. That's the one director that lives just north of Regina that I don't know if he's here this morning, but Mr. Will Odie is a very valued part of our organization and a director that's been putting extended hours into the time between we did not have an administrator and now with our new functioning administrator. He's a very integral part of our board, and I'm sure he's here in the building somewhere. Anyway, thank you. There's a program that we're going to kickstart about retaining existing organic acres and attracting new farmers, which is a very important thing. It's one of the priorities that were identified at Calling Lakes. In a nutshell, what we'd like to do after probably January, after our special meeting, is kickstart this kind of like town hall meetings at various places in the province. Try to recruit new and either existing farmers that are conventional farmers or new farmers that just want to enter into organic farming. And we're going to tell our story. We're going to provide information about what it takes to be an organic farmer. And hopefully we can and attract some new people and some new acres. The industry needs, as Debbie alluded to, the demand is there and the production is, of course, lower than the demand, which creates a very unique situation, and we like that. But we do need to think about the future, so that's going to be coming up. There's three remaining priorities that were addressed after that, or in that meeting. One was creating a task force group against GMO alfalfa and wheat. We want to renew, we want to take efforts to support the renewal of participatory breeding efforts. And we also want to enter into a better advertising campaign. My wife reminds me of this every once in a while. She said, I still don't see enough advertising for organic products or production or processing, the whole thing. We need more advertising. We need, and Canadian Organic Trade Association, CODA, has a program to help us out with that advertising campaign. It's called the Think Campaign. Very important to us. Anyways, I've taken up enough time for Debbie. I apologize, Debbie. But lots of exciting things happening at the sod level, and I've appreciated the time to share it with you. Thanks again to Terry and his group. Thank you to all of the working groups that were so involved in creating these priority items for us to take forward into the future. Thanks for your attention and have a great conference.